Hello there, my friends. Welcome back to Carpo's channel. You know, it's early June right now, and we've had a very, very little rain over the past several months here in the Portland area. I live in Washington, but for those who aren't aware, I live in Vancouver, Washington, which is just right across the bridge from Portland. We are split by the Willamette River, just like the states are. Now, Washington has its own problems with fires. However, the further north you go, we touch the Canadian border, and from there forward, it really depends on the climate in the area as to how bad the fires can really be. And lately, it has been something much more extreme than we've ever had in the past out here. As you gradually move south, that worsens, and therefore living here in Washington, I actually feel relatively safe. But I'd like to start by saying that when I first moved here, at least over, to Washington from Oregon, it wasn't a very far move. But my thought was I want to live in a better state, but I still want to live in the Pacific Northwest because I consider it one of the safest places to live when it comes to environmental disasters and upheaval and a variety of other things, as well as being one of the most beautiful. There were just too many factors that I loved about it. And I decided that I wanted to continue living in the state. We've been looking for land up here, but the state is varied. There's a desert, there's forest, there's the ocean, many different climates within, whereas some states have a very much more homogenized structure. Now, Oregon, this year, right now, all of the state is in a moderate drought phase already and has been. 35% of the state is in the high risk, or basically this, there's like a 5 tier level. They're at the next to the highest level. 1/3 of the state, and 5% is in the like over extreme category. And this is just for Oregon, which generally gets moderate rainfall. We have a serious issue right now with water. Not just drinking water, but rainwater as well. There are many different reasons why. I can't go into the detail and all the science here. I'm definitely not a meteorologist, and I'm not a geologist. I can only refer you to some basic ideas, which is as we lose more forests, naturally, uh, the as mountains lose forests, they tend to not be able to quote call the water in a way that the atmospheres the trees work with the atmosphere in a way in some places. So areas that have become deserts do not have the updrafts from the trees. And even something as small as the terpenes, which leave the trees, what you would smell as the pine smell, can go way up into the atmosphere and be used as a nucleus for moisture to bond to rain. But beyond this, this is much more of a simple concept here. First off, we have more trees burning, more areas burning, which means that water just runs right over the top and doesn't help to saturate the ground, giving us more of our, watershed water, which we hang on to. And number two, the snowpack is much lighter, all the way down through Oregon, California, Nevada, the Sierra Nevada mountain range. These areas are in severe decline right now. And what amazes me is how many people still argue that it's okay, it's fine, we have plenty of water. They're all lying to you. The reservoirs are full. The thing is, the reservoirs do fill up. When there's a huge rainfall, all the water comes down at once, and they have to actually release most of the water that comes down to prevent the flooding or overflow of the dam, just like what happened in Oroville in California. And this might be something that keeps coming up. But by doing this, it means that once you actually need the water, because the water flows in the winter, but when you need that water in the summer, it's not there. And there's no snowpack to continue melting. Not only that, but these fires and the dryness brings these diseases and beetles. There's a lot of tree loss, nurse trees getting lost, and not just, that doesn't even include the food that's lost, all the production and the farming. These are serious issues that people are talking about, but a lot still seem to be in denial about, as if it's just a phase. Now, all droughts are a phase, but this may be a very long-lasting drought. The fact that it's, even in May in the Pacific Northwest, we were already in drought should tell something to the rest of the nation. I would expect Phoenix to be in a drought, but the problem they have down there is the Colorado River. As the states want to grow and build their populations, they're going to continue draining off the Colorado. And I did a video, I think last year, about Utah is building a whole new, basically a small city. They're going to have water parks, pools, all the usual things, fountains, and they want their, quote, cut of the water, because all these states have a pact that they each get a certain amount. Utah hasn't utilized all of their water from the Colorado. So it's like everybody decides to split a bag of cookies, and then when there's only one cookie left, the guy who didn't get any wants some, not realizing that that's the last one. It's gone. There's no more left. And we really are beyond preserving the forests or planting trees. This is something so far beyond us. And one thing I forgot to include in this factor of trees and the storms coming in is the jet stream. The jet stream that comes through the Northwest, it brings a lot of the weather and the storms in. That jet stream has shifted now. And as the jet stream shifts, the air can just kind of stagnate. We don't get the same storms coming through and the same amount of water flow. It's supposed to rain here tomorrow and the next day. I guess everybody's just praying that there's like a couple inches of rain, but we all know it's just a drop in the bucket, pun intended. Very small amount. So, in California alone, there are over 1,400 dams. And not only do we have structural problems already on many of these, but we also have the issue of them not being able to produce electricity. This is one thing that's completely overlooked. When people talk about not having enough water, if there's not enough water flowing down those rivers, hydropower has to shut down. The minute the hydro plant has to shut down, they have to swap the grid and switch to other sources for those cities. And that is a huge burden on an already aging system, which continues to shut down from fires and overloads. And just like even what happened in Texas in the cold, this is going to start happening in the hot for them too eventually. These things happen. You're going to have utilities shutting down. But the thing is, here in the Pacific Northwest, for example, our utilities never shut down unless a tree falls over a power line. It happens all the time, but we don't have overloaded grid here. It's a pretty good system, and it's pretty well taken care of. But as I said, I like living here thinking there were really no risks. That's the risk. The future could hold a lot more heat waves, which can instantly kill these forests. Once the forests start dying and the water dries up, these creek beds dry up, the rivers dry up, and this can happen quickly. So I'm not trying to be defeatist or, I remember, just came to mind, somebody mentioned earlier that my videos have been negative lately, and I was thinking, it's some of these issues we have to talk about, and they're important, but I don't think of it as negative. Anytime I talk about a topic that I think of as dismissive or calling something out or making a point, it's always for really the improvement of the human species. That's my intention, because I want you to be aware. If you're thinking about moving to Phoenix, like Roberta did, one of my subs, and I felt so bad because I know that she's going to be facing that. One point I wanted to make is a lot of folks talk about how running out of water doesn't matter because we can do desalination. And I believe San Diego is already doing that. And but it is an extremely, extremely expensive process to remove the salt from seawater. On top of this, it takes power, and it costs a lot of money, and it also pollutes the ocean because you have to crank out this heavy, seawater, basically just pure salt, and it tends to kill sea life. There's a lot of things we'd have to do to capture it. You'd think, well, you could put it in piles. It's very more complicated, but it is possible. Another aspect is recycling our wastewater. Literally flush your toilet, recycle it in this plant, and then you drink it. This is being done, and it could be very great way to conserve water. The problem is that people are opposed to it, and that won't stop it, but I don't think it's going to catch on quick enough to stop what's going on. Some of these reservoirs are down 75 or more %. If you go look at Lake Mead, and by the way, Lake Mead is the biggest reservoir in the entire country. It feeds California, Nevada, Arizona, and parts of Utah. The Colorado River is a monster, or it used to be. Now, that water's being drained so fast, and they're just putting in more and more pipes. Like I was saying, Utah wants a 6-foot pipe that goes cranking over the mountains. And mind you, a lot of this water is pumped with pumps. There's issues with power as well. And it's dangerous because entire societies live down there. And the point I want to make on this, oh, by the way, on the desalination, that's one thing that might work. But when it comes to the recycling water, you can actually get 2 for 1. You get your water back, but you also get to use human poop as fertilizer. And yes, human poop makes fine fertilizer. We have grown to be disgusted by it because it's human. It's the same poo. Okay, as long as it's processed properly, you can still get your phosphorus and your potassium out of it and your nitrogen. And yeah, the future of mankind could really make these things work, but I don't think with the droughts that we have right now, that the people who are living in the South and, are going to be able to handle this much longer. Which brings me, even in Klamath in Oregon, there are farmers who bought land right next to the head gate. Now the head gate goes into the Klamath Lake down into the basin. They are trying to stop the farm. They basically told the farmers in the Klamath Basin, which is in Oregon, you get no water this year at all. There's just not enough. And they're going apeshit. Can you blame them? That's their livelihood. That's what they do. And this is, by the way, the same area where Ammon Bundy took over a federal building down there, and then ended up having all his charges dismissed anyway. He got away with basically terrorizing this, holding this building hostage, not letting anybody come into the park and stuff. It was a crazy time. The point being, I empathize with the farmers who are having a hard time, who are having to shut down, who aren't able to grow their crops. The point is, it's like, if you fight over the bottom of the bucket's going to be empty. We're already having issues. They're trying to preserve many different things, fish, land, streams, rivers. It turns into a battle. People get angry, and there's social unrest because of it. And this is why water really will become the new oil. And as the climate dries down there, I know a lot of people are opposed to migration. It's been a big issue. I should say, not everyone who's against migration is against migration done properly. The thing I'd like to say is, for example, people are afraid of people moving up here from Mexico because they're afraid that they will, whatever it may be, say take the jobs or, use the resources, getting free services, whatnot. The thing is, this same rule applies for a lot of people in the way they feel about people moving to their state. In the 90s, Oregon was like a haven for Californians who were moving and flocking up there. It became so normal that Oregon is basically synonymous. There's Beaverton is a town out there, and it's like Little California is what we would call it. So many people who had moved up from the other state. And our thought was, well, it drove up all the housing prices. It made it harder to find a job, Even though the reality is businesses expand and it works out. The truth is the housing in Portland went astronomically high, and it still is right now. Even the house that I live in has gone way up in Vancouver. It's crazy. And it's because more and more people want to move here. That's the only reason housing prices increase. Is very, very, very simple. Because it's a desirable area to live in. And that can be for multiple reasons. It could be for jobs or, great business there. But it can be just location and beauty. But it's most often jobs. But the other side of this is that there's also safety or just escape from where you're at. And a lot of people who live in the South right now, I should say, when I say the South, for me the South is California, Nevada, and Arizona, because it's actually South and East to me. Not the South and the South that we consider the South, so you get the point. I feel that the future is grim for a lot of them, and that it's not just something that's going to be gradual. I mean, this is already happening, but I think that within the next few years, if they don't get a heavy dose of rain and we don't have a shift in some of the jet stream and some of these things don't change, which I don't think they're going to, because we're gradually warming. It's whether we're doing it or not isn't the point. We're so busy fighting over this pathetic idea of man-made or Anthropocene age or anthropic global warming. We're arguing whether it's your exhaust pipe or factories or a natural process. The fact is it happens. It doesn't matter. It's happening. The climate is always changing. So whether people say it changes all the time, yeah, it is changing though. So what do we do about it? Well, there's nothing we can do about it. Driving electric cars isn't going to save us. I know this. Going green is not going to save us in the short run. It will definitely help in the long run to not burn fossil fuels because we're basically breathing it in the very least. The soot lands on the glaciers, but they're already melting. It's a huge cluster F that we have to deal with when hearing about these things. And there's so much debate about it. What it really comes down to is this. You can see what's happening in a lot of places. And water is becoming the new oil. 20 years ago, I was reading about how George Bush and his family were buying up water rights, water wells in Texas, and then in South America, California, all over the place. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. And the article went on to say that, within the next 30 years or so, there's going to be some serious water wars out there. And I was like, wow, I guess here we are. So anyway, that's my video for today, and thanks for coming along. That's about all I've got to say. I want to leave it on a positive note that, if anything, I'm hoping that states will wisen up and not expand their communities without doing water conservation methods, that people will reconsider how they recycle the waters in their area, because there can be enough water for everyone, but there is just so much wasted. But the fact is, if we keep expanding, there will never be enough, and if the drought continues, then there's going to be a lot of problems. And I'm very grateful to live out here, because I don't think our rivers are going anywhere out here, but I could be wrong. Anything could change tomorrow. Peace out, and I'll talk to y'all later. Have a wonderful day. Go get a glass of water.